Nice. 2,000 miles together. Do you want one?
Mm-hmm.
This is my book review for 2,000 Miles Together. Hello, welcome to my book review, 2,000 Miles Together, story of the thru hike in 2018 of the Crawford family, which is Ben and Cammie Crawford and their 6 children, the youngest of which was 2 years old, and they carried in a carrier on their back. Thanks for the coffee. Came with a Fight for Together bumper sticker, or just sticker, whatever. I'm gonna stick that on our car because I think you guys are really cool. A Hike Your Own Hike postcard with the family. That's the family, that's their trail name. I don't know who wrote this or which one of them wrote this, but I thought it was pretty cool to do that. And then of course they each signed it. Like, how nice was that? Even Rainier, that looks almost like, you know, Viking runes or something. Thanks, Rainier. Appreciate it, man. The father also wrote this book, Unleash Your Family. All right. Take 5. So I absolutely love this book. This book is going to be one of my favorites that I'll always remember. Because when we first saw their documentary, we didn't idolize them, but I think they're super cool parents that took their 6 children on an epic adventure, one of which they all took turns carrying. And, you know, love them or hate them or whatever your opinion is about them, you know, that demands respect. I'll give you my big thoughts on the book, and then I'll just go through just some little parts of the book that I enjoyed. So all throughout the book, there were little parts where there were like hateful comments online, and I kind of remember seeing some of this stuff and hearing about it, I went back and watched their vlogs after I saw their documentary. And I just want to say to people online on YouTube that make comments, or even on Facebook or social media, to be careful with your biting criticism. I mean, this was 2 parents with 6 children. You know, I mean, I don't know, I have 3 children, and I know my kids are super sensitive, and I think they're cool parents, so their kids are probably pretty sensitive. And I can't imagine, you know, us going on like this epic adventure and them seeing like these crazy critical comments of their father, who I think did a great job. In this book, the father, whose name is Ben, was brutally honest about, you know, his doubts, his fears, his mistakes, about his relationships with his kids. And I mean, some parts, you know, he really admitted times when he made mistakes. I just think that was really humble thing to include in this book, and I was really impressed. People nowadays don't even want to be held accountable by other people that they love, you know, let alone self-reflecting and holding themselves accountable. So I was really impressed with that. I think after reading this book, I could see that hiking the Appalachian Trail is even a more sacred experience than I previously thought, just from watching different vlogs and stuff. We had COVID earlier this year. We were confined to our house for over 3 weeks, and we binge watched like everything Appalachian Trail we could watch. And I'll just share a couple of the different channels. One of them is Camper 2020. He's the guy that thru hiked and vlogged his hike, and he raised over $15,000 for neuroblastoma research. There was his trail family, wander out there, really nice people. There's another couple who are veterans their channel's called Campfire Confidential. There's who I think is a really sweet girl. Her channel is Daisy Hikes. And of course, my personal favorite is Wild on the Trail. I think you should definitely check this guy out. He just seemed like a really humble guy, and he seemed really thankful just to be out there, because let's face it, it's expensive. I mean, it costs a lot of money. No one can just take off work for 6 months. I just loved his attitude, that he was really grateful to be out there, every minute of it, and it shows. One more thing is that this experience that these parents gave their kids of through hiking this trail, they're going to take with them for the rest of their lives. I mean, 30, 40 years from now, they're going to, you know, they're going to be telling their own kids, and they'll be telling their grandkids later. Who knows? Maybe they'll even decide to hike it again. This kind of memory is a special gift, and I just say God bless those parents for giving that to their own children. Going back to the online comments, this was like peppered throughout this book. I just want to say that the parts where there are these nasty, foul, word garbage comments that they shared in here, that people wrote about the father, about the mother, they called Child Protective Services on them. They did all kinds of things. There was a Reddit comment thread. It like hurts my soul to even think about it. But those things should not have been included in this book. Now, just wait a second. I don't mean that by saying that the author should not have actually put them in here. What I mean is that, honestly, this family going on this epic adventure, they're an American family that is hiking with their 6 children, carrying one on their back the entire way, up and down mountains. They should have been celebrated. I'm not idolizing them. You know, they're not perfect people, but they're very cool, and they seem like great parents. An American family like this, through hiking the Appalachian Trail, is something that people should have been pumping them up and celebrating them, not tearing them down every step of the way. And honest to God, it just broke my heart and hurt my soul to read, especially if there's a few in there. I will not share them, but it wasn't necessary. And I don't think that they should have been in there. Not to say that he shouldn't have included them in the book, but they never should have happened. Okay, so I made my Amazon review, and it's under the Amazon name Southsider1. And I reviewed this book, and if there's any other places I could put that review, put it in the comments, and I will gladly do so, because I really love this book. I think this family is super cool, and they deserve the support of their fellow Americans, Democrat, Republican, whatever you are, I don't care. It's not important. We're all people, and what they did was really cool. Simple as that. So I'll just bust through my favorite little points of the book. Boom. Point 1. They were so truthful and honest about all the suffering that they experienced at the beginning of the trail. It was super cold. They hiked through the snow. They were like eating mac and cheese, that it was like if they didn't, he talked about like if you didn't cook it right, you know, it was like mush or like soup or like glue. About being cold. They were brutally honest about the fact that they didn't really enjoy much of anything at the beginning. And I think, you know, they didn't frame it like they were heroes. They were very honest about it, and I thought that was cool. Page 69, there was a part where the father, Ben, was super honest about this time where his child, Rainier, was in the carrier on his back. And he was crying hysterically, and he was driving him crazy. I think they were stressed out, and he reached back and he flicked him in the mouth. And Rainier cried, and he talked about like how he was just agonizing about it. And when I read this, I got super emotional because I have a 3-year-old son. This is Daniel.
Hey, Daniel. Hi.
And I immediately remembered this moment that was exactly the same where we were in the kitchen, and he just wouldn't shut up. And I reached forward and I flicked him right in the lip, and he just cried, and he looked at me like he couldn't believe that I had done that. And so I stopped reading. I was reading on the electronic copy. And I turned over to him, and I sat down. I looked at him, and I apologized for that. And you know what? He looked me in the eyes, and I can tell like he remembered. So don't think just because your kid's 3 years old they won't remember something like that. I don't know. It was a special moment, and I appreciate that. On page 79, when they were going through the Smoky Mountains, they had this experience and interaction where they were worried that, you know, people wouldn't like them, or they would be annoyed that they had a bunch of children. And it turned out to be the exact opposite, where they were just blown away. And I remember that on the vlogs, in the documentary, the father just saying that he was crying because people were like looking out for his family, and people were really selfless. And there was a heartwarming interaction there at that shelter. And, you know, I think you'll like that part of the book. Page 100, they talked a little bit about this Reddit comment thread, and shared a few of the comments, and I'll just say, yikes. Because people should be ashamed of themselves. Page 101, they talked about a 95-mile loop in Washington State called the Wonderland Trail that they did, I think twice, as a family. And I just took that as kind of an inspiration, and that sort of got me thinking about a trail that's in Illinois that we're going to use to prepare for our own thru hike. We're planning to do a thru hike in 2023. So midway through the Smoky Mountains, the internet hate machine kind of really caught up with them, and they did like some really brutal self-reflecting in this book, and I'll tell you, they pulled no punches, and I was just really impressed with how honest they were. I'll just share one excerpt from that part of the book. Page 106. Through the brightly lit phone screen, we saw an online world filled with passion and anger and so many opinions. But the second we turned off the screen, all we could see was a dirt path winding its way between trees and rocks. The people we met on the trail cared about us deeply. There was such a stark contrast between the online world and the trail, our real world. And not long after that, it was snowing, and they were approached by an actual CPS agent with some police officers, and they interviewed them, and they found that there was no problem, and they let them go. But still, the fact that it came to that, the fact that people were so nasty and sent them out there was crazy. And actually there was a few videos on their channel where their kids like talked about, you know, that whole experience, and it was really interesting. On page 115, they stopped at a tavern in Hot Springs, and somebody actually paid half their bill. I thought that was so cool. I loved the journal entries. They included some journal entries from their kids. I really loved that, especially some of the more colorful language. I thought that was pretty funny. I thought it was super impressive that their teenage son, 7, I think he was 13 at the time, he edited all of their vlog videos. If you've seen any of my videos, you can see like I'm a pretty terrible editor, and I'm still getting used to it, but this is a teenage boy. Dude, you did a great job. There was a friend who let them stay there who had seen like their birth, this Rainier's birth video on their channel. And the kids got to talk a little bit about the CPS interaction. And here's one of the quotes from their teenage daughter, Eden. It was very truthful. If anyone should be telling our parents that they're doing something wrong, it should be us. And there's 6 of us. They're always asking us how we're feeling, and we're not afraid to tell them. There's a lot of maturity in those kids. Then after that, they stopped in the middle of their thru hike to run a marathon, and then they went straight back onto the trail. Awesome. They talked about this biking trip that they took, and they stopped in Damascus, Virginia. But they talked about stopping at a hostel which was in someone's garage, and there were thru hikers there. And that's when their dream was born. Very cool story. This is obviously a family that marches to their own tune. And what I appreciated was, even though they seemed to be like a little critical of religion and stuff like that, there were a couple times where they had like very devoutly Christian people who were praying for them and giving them prayers, and I just loved that they were like very respectful about that. They accepted the prayers, they accepted like their love, and they had fellowship with them. So I thought that was really cool. Page 135, they ran into, you probably remember it from the documentary, they ran into this older Jewish man who went by the name Noam, who had tears in his eyes, and was really emotional, and my wife's Jewish, so I just happen to love Jewish people. And he kind of reminded me of like her dad, but just, you know, her dad doesn't have that huge cool beard. I loved hearing about their tramily, the Degenerate, and also Silver. There were so many interesting tales of camaraderie amongst this like truly motley band of uniquely different individuals. That must have been so much fun. There was one part where there was a forest fire, and there was all this criticism saying that they weren't pure thru hikers, and they were yellow blazing, and you know, dude, there was a forest fire, so, you know, I mean, not a big deal. You're still thru hikers. There was a part on page 186 when the father Ben jokingly told his oldest daughter, you know, you do it, you carry this child, and she said, I'll do it. That started this trend where the other kids, even the other older kids, started to carry Rainier, and they started to take shifts carrying him, and they did it like as a team. That must have been so cool for all those kids, and you know, for their little brother to see that happen. Their channel, Fight for Together, is really appropriately named. Felt like when Dove started carrying Rainier, it was like I was reading about some heroine from some old story that just jumped in and saved the day, just by the way that her father talked about it in this book. I loved the interesting story about the crazy driving Mennonite lady named Roberta. I won't spoil it, but you can look forward to that. I laughed to tears when I read that. I love the story about finally meeting this tatted up, dreadlocked park ranger that had sent them emails just with some concerns, and this lady totally dismissed their concerns about child protective services and, you know, worrying about like getting into some kind of trouble just because there were jerks online, you know, trying to get them in trouble. Okay. I thought it was interesting when they stayed with Tobiah and this like cult on their farm. I thought it was super creepy, but I do think it was kind of interesting that the Crawfords, that they, at least in this time, they celebrated Shabbat. My wife is Jewish, and we are actually Christians. We don't talk too much about it on our channel because, you know, we don't want to like beat anyone over the head with like religion or anything. But we celebrate Shabbat, and that's Friday night to Saturday night, you know, where we rest and we try to focus on being together. And I think it's awesome that they also did that. That creeped me out when they kept asking them to stay another day. Very weird. I loved 15-year-old Eden's journal entry about the rocks in Pennsylvania. She said that the rocks hurt your foot like a butt cheek on a stick. I loved that on Father's Day, the gift to the father was that the kids decided as a gift that they would carry Rainier all day long. And he mentions in this part that he was just crying tears of joy that they thought of him like that. I love the sweet reunion in New York with Hops and about them sharing New York pizza. I love that their friend Hudson promised to drive 500 miles to meet them at Katahdin. Oh, that was cool. I love the story about meeting Harvey Lewis, a school teacher from their hometown in Cincinnati that was trying to set a record. He was doing over 45 miles a day on the trail. Wow. Right about this part, they talked more about the Degenerates, their trail family. I thought they were a very uniquely different group of people, and I was thoroughly entertained. It was cool to see them in the documentary and everything, but just reading more about it. That's the cool thing about this book, is that, I loved reading about Carl, the omelet guy, who was retired and did trail magic using his Social Security money. He did it like a job, giving people trail magic, like cooking for people. That was like one of the sweetest moments of the book too. I loved on page 295 when one of the Degenerates gave daughter Memory one of their trademark conch shells. Loved reading about the challenges with the White Mountains and their fears and anxieties about it. I'm just gonna file away in my future Appalachian Trail hopes and plans to check out Joe Dodge Lodge, and I was like overwhelmed at the generosity of this European man named Harm, who actually covered their $500 tab for one of their nights there. I just thought that was really generous and nice. There was a part where he talks about taking their first 0 day in 53 days and having some beer and cigars. I don't like tobacco. I quit 8 years ago. I used to smoke 2 packs a day. But I'll tell you, after 53 days of hiking and having no breaks, that beer must have tasted so crisp and delicious. There was a really interesting information about Baxter State Park and how it originated, and the person who founded the park, Percival Baxter, that he was so like almost cultish in like how it should be run. I had no idea about any of that, and I was kind of blown away by it. And I was also pretty bothered that they didn't make an exception and let Little Rainier summit the Mount Katahdin with them. There was this one part after that where their son Seven was kind of falling behind, and Ben told this story about how he kind of like was just nudging him and pushing him, and then Seven actually fell down, and there was almost 2 pages where he was writing about like how terrible he felt. And I'll just say that growing up with like a really insensitive stepfather, my mother's second husband, Seven, just go and read those 2 pages, because there are a lot of kids out there that are growing up with stepdads or no dads that don't care at all about making mistakes, and worse, don't admit it when they do. And I was really moved when I read that part of the book. He said in this part that they went through 5 or 6 manuscripts without even including that story, and that was probably one of the most important parts of the book, in my opinion. I felt like it really showed just the kind of person that Ben the father is. There was a part right after that where they stayed with a friend, or maybe they met them, I can't remember off the top of my head, Brad and Beth, where they complimented Ben, and I felt like it was so timely after everything going on, especially after the incident with his son, where they just said it was so cool that they were taking their kids on adventures like that. And I just feel like sometimes, when God sees us hurting over our own mistakes, when we finally do admit, you know what, I screwed up and I made a mistake, I feel like he brings people, even if you don't believe in him, I believe that he brings people across your path to touch your heart, like right at the right moment. And I felt like that was perfect timing. They had like a flu scare towards the end of their hike, right before they got to Katahdin. I bet that must have been really nerve-wracking. Fresh ground, to help cook meals for the Crawford family through the 100-mile wilderness. I was just blown away how cool that was, that they did that. And I loved Fresh Ground's like kind of humble spirit about the whole thing too. It's just awesome to have like a cool person or cool people come through for you like when you need it and support you. So later on, and you'll probably remember from the documentary, if you've seen it, if you haven't, I'm going to include a link to it in the description. But Baxter State Park told them that they could not bring their 2-year-old to the summit of Mount Katahdin. And I loved how the parents, Ben and Cammie, they didn't just push through a decision, whether to leave him with a babysitter. They gave every one of their kids a voice, an equal voice. And I thought that was so impressive and admirable how they did that. I remember seeing that, in the videos, but to read about it and just what they were thinking and feeling, I think that's the most important parts of this book. Just reading about what was going through their mind and their heart when they made these decisions. I think it was bogus that Baxter State Park didn't let Rainier go with them, but I loved how they left the whole decision up to their family. I loved how this one part, the Degenerates hiked 42 miles in 36 hours to meet the Crawfords in this monumental effort just to meet them and catch up with them. I thought that was like a true friend would do something like that. They suffered to be with their friends. And when they finally caught up to them, I loved the gift that Culligan gave to Ben. It was this book called Slaughterhouse-Five that had this quote, I think that was, that they had tattooed on them or something. But I just thought that was really cool. When they finally did get to the tree line and they got to their summit, there was a lot of things that happened. I'm not going to spoil it because I feel like this was one of the most emotionally moving and just very cool scenes in the book. But I'll just leave it there for you to look forward to because it was awesome. I loved he included a post-trail section where they just talked about, how they adjusted after they got home. I thought that was really neat. And I really loved I won't ruin it, but I loved the unique gift that Fresh Ground gave to their oldest daughter, Dove. I loved in the epilogue how Hops finally summited Mount Katahdin at the age of 68, 1 week later. Yep, so if you get a chance, check out 2,000 Miles Together by the Crawford family about their 2018 thru hike. It's available on their website and it's available on Amazon. Go check it out. Highly recommend it. This is one of the best books I've ever read, and I have not enjoyed a book like this in a long time. Also, you can check out the other book that Ben Crawford wrote called Unleash Your Family. So, thanks for checking out my book review, 2,000 Miles Together. Hope you enjoyed it. First time I ever did a book review. Have mercy. Just what's coming up. We're planning to go back to Starved Rock soon. There's also another little state park right by it called Matisse State Park, which we're gonna do a little hike of that pretty soon. My uncle Keith, who visited and made tie-dyes, he actually made this tie-dye. He's coming back for Christmas. So we're gonna have like a nice bonfire outside and hang out with him a little bit. He was a little camera shy last time, so we couldn't do much. And then with all the restrictions downtown, we couldn't really do too much. So after that, in the spring of 2021, we're planning a 30-mile section hike of the River to River Trail, located in Shawnee National Forest, Illinois. That's our next steps, and I chose that because, you know, most people quit the Appalachian Trail by Neal's Gap, which is about 30 miles in. So this is a big test for our kids mostly, and us too. We're getting our gear together over the next 2 months. So there's going to be a gear update video about our big 3 tent, pack, and sleeping bags, and the kit that we're going to bring with. So look forward to that. Thanks again for the coffee, Crawford family. Really appreciate it. Loved your book. And so go out, check that out. Thanks again for watching Adventures of Our Family.
For 5 months, our family walked 13 miles every day.
We became the largest family to complete the Appalachian Trail.
We encountered snowstorms, overflowing rivers, rattlesnakes, and the government threatening to take away our kids.
And that was the easy part.
2,000 miles together, the story of the largest family to hike the Appalachian Trail is available on Amazon and all major online retailers.